I am being watched. Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 2, Episode 5. It's called Bury the Lead. So, spoilers for the episode. This is a very plot-heavy episode. Or, well, I guess what I mean by that is that it's... I got less big themes from this one and more a lot of details about the investigation that was going on, which revolves around a journalist who is looking into the true leader of HR, which came as something as a surprise to me to even be something we were talking about. Because I think if you had told me that when they arrested a bunch of people at the end of season 1 because of the whole HR being exposed, if you just told me that was the leaders and that was it, they're done now, I would have said, yeah, that seems about right. I was surprised that there was more to do with HR. But there is, and the big thing of this episode is that there's a potential leader of HR that's exposed in the press by our main person of interest, who goes by Maxine. She's a reporter. She's one of these sort of cutting edge. What's the phrase I'm looking for? She's ruthless. She's a hard hitting reporter. She goes after her job. The first time we see her, she effectively corners this politician or whoever it is into a position where either she'll tell on him for cheating on his wife if he doesn't give her a comment on the fund spending or something. There's a lot of sort of moments like that with her, and it really sets her up as this go-getter type character who's passionate about her job, and that's what she cares about, and she finds the story. You know, she's like probably an even more extreme Lois Lane if you want to compare it to someone. Actually, the actress was giving me some weird familiarity vibes. I don't think I've seen her or anything. I think it's just because she looks like someone else. I think at first I was getting a little bit of Dana Meyer, Dina Meyer, and then I realised that who she reminded me of, particularly her smile, was Tracy Scoggins, who was in a season of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and a season of Babylon 5. She was giving me serious deja vu of her at various points in this episode, which isn't important. I'm just sharing my thought process as I was thinking, did I know her from somewhere? I didn't. I've never heard of her before in my life, but that's what she was making me think of. So she's our main person of interest, and she clearly makes a lot of enemies looking into all these various things, and someone, of course, is likely to want her dead for the things that she is exposing. That's all fine and well. The actual who is the leader of HR wasn't that compelling to me. I wasn't that fussed, probably because I'd already in my head let that go. I was already like, oh, we're done with HR. I was like, oh, there's more? There's a secret leader of HR now that we have to reveal? Okay, I guess we'll do that. Which isn't really a complaint per se, but I wasn't immediately kind of ooh, well, you know, I wasn't pulled in by it because in my heart I'd already let HR go as a concept. So if anything, this just felt like we were kind of retreading ground a little bit in that sense. But what made the episode good, and the interesting part of the episode, is the idea. Well, it's twofold, right? One's a very entertaining part of it, but the main idea overall is that this reporter has in the past asked questions about a man in a suit. The idea being that if Reese gets close to her the way that he normally does, he will be in the newspaper. He will be exposed. She will want to write about him. And what I thought was interesting about this is that most of the characters that he initially has to stay away from because, they can't know about what Reese does and what Finch does, and they have to keep it a secret, and this person's too dangerous to give any information to. Typically, it plays out in a way where eventually they'll be in such a dangerous situation and Reese will save their life that that'll become null and void. It won't matter anymore. They'll be so grateful for the life saving and for the help that it'll just kind of you know what, whatever you're doing, I don't have to say a word about it because you're doing something good, and I'll just, you know, that's more or less, I'd say, the average way it pans out when they at first think we can't get in too close. This is interesting from a conceptual point of view because a character who is a reporter whose entire career motivation is to find and expose truth and tell people what's going on is kind of the ultimate example of this type of character, this type of plot device, which is someone that they cannot, under any circumstance, just get close to. Reese can't just get to know her and say that he's there to help, because she'll start asking questions about who he is. She'll write about the experience, even if he doesn't tell her anything. So they gave me a character that they convinced me very, very quickly. Reese wants to go in and save her at one point, and Finch is like, no, you can't go in, you have to keep your distance, because she will ask questions, she will expose what we are doing. It's in her nature to do this. And they never rescinded that the whole episode. And I really respected that. I was like, no. No matter how much you help her, no matter how much you do to save her life and how grateful she is, because of what she does, she's still a threat as far as exposing the operation. And I thought that was the really cool wrinkle to the story in this episode. They made it a little bit different. They made it engaging to see how they dance around that and how they try and handle it. And of course, how they do handle it is very entertaining, because Finch's idea is for Reese to be a potential love interest for her, and that's how he can get close without exposing who he actually is and what he's doing. This leads to a lot of funny moments. Right away, as soon as he mentions that, oh, you've been flirting all day. The sentence, "you have been flirting all day," when you yourself, hearing that comment, have not been flirting with anyone, is really funny to me. And then Reese sees her laugh looking at her phone, and he's like, "Finch, what did I just say to her?" That's a really funny line. I was very entertained by that. And it leads to this almost like a comedy movie like set piece where Reese is taking her out on this first date, but it's really Finch who's done all the courtship. It's Finch who knows a lot about her. It's Finch who's sort of painted this like profile of who this character Reese is playing is. They use the name John, but they give him a different surname, of course. Finch keeps like giving commentary and saying, "No, don't do that. Like, you're supposed to like this, or you're supposed to not like that." And at one point starts like talking about the intricacies of human interaction, and it's really funny, because it's clear that if this was actually a rom-com, I guarantee it would end with her and Finch falling in love, because she would realize at a certain point that the person whose taste she's actually connecting with is the guy on the comms, and that would be the ending to the rom-com. Obviously, that's not what the focus of this show is, so that's not where it goes. But you could totally see how a cheesy rom-com version of this would lead to that ending. So all of this was very funny. Zoe coming in, who was planted by Finch. It was nice to see her again, might I add, but she comes in to make her jealous, because a beautiful woman will see the approval of another beautiful woman as a good sign, or to make her jealous even. And that is a little funny bit, as Reese is just awkwardly reacting to all of this. I think it's so funny because Reese typically as a character is so cool-headed. He's so ready for anything. He's in all these dangerous situations. So it's really funny for Finch to throw him into this deep end where he is out of his element. Not because he would always be out of his element going on a date with a woman. I'm sure if it was a woman he met and flirted with as his own personality, he'd probably be doing just fine on a date. But he's been thrown into this deep end where he doesn't even know his own backstory. Part of that's his fault, because as Finch points out, he didn't read the notes. He didn't read the research material he was supposed to. But that's what makes it all very funny. And having Finch come off as the love guru because he set all this up and knows what he's doing is also very entertaining. So for me, this was the most fun part I had of the whole episode. I think it was just fun with Reese and Finch playing off of each other. Their friendship's at such a strong point now that we can have these really entertaining kind of sequences. Finch, of course, is annoyed that he got a squeaky toy for Bear, so he takes it back by the end of the episode. I don't have any great analysis on that. I'm sure it probably symbolizes something if I really stopped and thought about it, but nothing was jumping out at me as I was watching the episode. I mean, that's basically the gist of the character stuff between her and Reese. Obviously, he's there throughout. At the end of the episode, when everything's done, you know, he brings up, "Hey, you're going to go back to looking for the man in the suit?" Because he asked about that on the first date. And she's like, "Nah, he's definitely a myth, because given how much trouble I've been in the last few days, he would have definitely shown up if he was real." And of course, it's a little bit cute, winky to the audience, because he was there. He just got close to you without you realizing it. I almost thought that just to really make it convincing that he's not the man in the suit, even though it wouldn't make any sense. Lots of people wear suits for various reasons, but it would have been really funny to me if every time he went to see her, he intentionally did not wear a suit. He wore just like a I don't know, a polo shirt or something. The idea being that he doesn't want to be seen in a suit because she might connect the dots. She might see the man, she might see the suit, and she might start making assumptions, and you can't have that. It's dangerous business. So I had a lot of fun with this part of the episode for sure. The rest of the stuff is perfectly fine, but it does feel like it maybe like takes a back, or maybe goes a couple of steps backwards in some ways. Mainly just because we're talking about HR again. There's this secret big bad of HR that we have to deal with now. He's revealed at the end of the episode to be the man that was working with Maxine, someone who she was going to talk to, played by Clark Peters, who's a face that I recognize from a couple of things, mainly The Wire being the main thing. But he was in 3 Billboards. He was in the first John Wick. I want to say I saw him in something else not too long ago, but I mean, I'm happy to see him. I'm happy to see the actor. The character in this episode, though, is a little undercooked. He's just kind of there and says hello to her a couple times. And then at the end, you find out he's the secret guy behind everything. The other thing that made it feel like we were going maybe on a little bit of a step backwards to me in this episode, kind of, was Fusco. And I say that because there's a moment in here that I actually really love, which is, so Fusco's plot this episode, other than just helping where he's supposed to, is that Simmons comes to see him and holds him at gunpoint because he knows that the feds are closing in on HR and who's really involved and everyone in it. And he's like, hey, you're going to find out who they're going after, and you're going to help, and then you're going to get that ledger that has all the names in it, and you're going to, like, make sure that I'm not implicated in it, or we're both going to jail, kind of thing. Fusco makes the choice not to tell Reese and the others about this meeting. And he's even specifically asked, when was the last time you saw Simmons? Because Reese wants him to go follow Simmons. And he doesn't, so he gets the opportunity to fess up, and not even confess at this point. At this point, it would just be, oh, this is the natural point to bring it up because now you're asking about it. You could see his response being, oh, it's funny you asked that actually, because just yesterday, so on, so on. But instead, he doesn't, and he sort of plays quiet on it. And it feels like, okay, he's doing something a little bit behind the team's back. It doesn't feel like he's going bad again. It feels like he feels threatened. He's trying to sort of make it go away so that this guy will stay away from him and his family and whatever. And the one part that I really like is that Reese says, we'll keep an eye on Simmons, and if he gives you any trouble, I've got your back. And what I liked about that moment, and of course it's peak drama because this is the first time Fusco's actually been lying to them in quite some time. So you have that little sad bit of dramatic irony that Reese has finally said something that is just entirely encouraging. Because I don't think he said anything quite as supportive as that. Like, him saying, I've got your back, Fusco, he's always so witty with Fusco. He's always so dry. He's always so cold with him and makes little digs about the fact that he's a corrupt cop, or you'll figure something out, Fusco. He's intentionally kind of mean to him, and we kind of understood why that was to an extent. So I do like that we're at the point where seemingly he's starting to just open up to Fusco a little bit. And the way that we've seen the other relationships develop, he's kind of starting to be nicer to him. And the sad irony is that he's being nicer to him when Fusco finally has something to hide again. I do like that moment. I absolutely do. I'm just a little concerned that by the end of the episode, Fusco gets this ledger that's got the names in it, and he pulls out the page with his name on it, which at this point we might even say he's earned not being held accountable for this stuff because of the stuff that he's been doing with Reese and Finch and everyone, and all the good that he's maybe been doing. Obviously the law doesn't see it that way, but this is a TV show and it's how the viewers probably see him. And he takes out the page with Simmons. And when he sees Simmons again at the end, Simmons is like, yeah, you're not out. Like, once you're into this side of the life, you're always in. And that certainly implies that Simmons is going to come to him again. That's the one part that makes it feel like we're maybe taking a little bit of a step back, where I did think we were done with Simmons giving Fusco orders and Fusco having to kind of sort of play both sides by dealing with Simmons, but also dealing with the main team. I thought we were kind of beyond that a little bit. So that said, though, I don't know what they're going to do with it next. Like they could do something entirely fascinating and something exciting with it next, and anything I'm saying now will be completely irrelevant and just washed away. That is entirely possible. It was just a little feeling I had at the end where I'm like, oh, we're kind of back here with Fusco a little bit, and I didn't really feel like we had to go back there. It felt like, we're moving forward. Even Fusco and Carter bantering a little bit at the start of the episode when one of the cops tells Carter not to go after the head of HR because even if she finds him, all of the mobs and all the bad people in the city are going to want him dead. So you'd be painting a target in your back if you're the one that's with him. And Carter says, "Oh, is it weird that makes me want to catch him even more?" And Fusco smiles and says, "For you, no." And she smiles back at him. So there's a camaraderie that's kind of built up a little bit, and it's nice to see that. I think the big drama part of the episode, to go back to the main person of interest, Maxine, is that she is basically led down a trail that says that this one particular guy is the head of HR. This Christopher Zambrino. He's the son of one of the mob bosses from season 1, so everyone assumes he's dirty, but he's actually seemingly completely clean. He's got an import-export business, and she goes to see him, and she gets an anonymous tip, but then she kind of corroborates it to a point by calling a contact in the FBI, says, yeah, we're looking into this guy, and then she ends up printing this story, which makes the world think that this is who he is. But then it turns out, after he's already been killed by, people from the mob or from corrupt FBI agents, that he was innocent. That this was something that the real head of HR wanted. He wanted a fall guy, and now everyone thinks the head of HR's dead. At least for a while. Obviously, by the end of the episode, they print a retraction and, point out some of the real people that are put away for it. But we find out at the end, of course, that the real head of HR, who I never got his name in the episode, but his name's Quinn. Just looking at IMDb, he, he's safe. He's talking to Simmons. Those two are like happy as can be together. They've gotten away with it. They're still scot-free, whilst every other single cop that was in HR seemingly has been put away and arrested for their crimes. So, we'll see where this goes. I think Simmons, of course, we already knew. We knew that he had to be resolved in some way because he was still about after the end of season 1. Now we have this new threat of Quinn, and we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure where they're going with this. We already, of course, have Elias. We have Root. We have a lot, and we even have the guy in Washington who sent his henchman, Hirschman, I remember. So we already have like these various villains, or maybe Root could be more of an anti-hero, or she's kind of like a wild card as opposed to an outright villain, but you've got these various villainous entities already, so I am very curious as to, okay, where are we going with these particular characters, and what plots are we leading us down here. So, yeah, I would say that, like, I don't want to sound too negative, because I still quite like the episode overall, that I found a lot of joy and entertainment in a lot of the elements of the story. I would just say that some of the ongoing threats that this episode sets up feel like maybe a little bit of a rehash of things that we already done in season 1. I thought at the end of season 1 it felt like a nice neat point to say HR's done, we can move on now. I'm a little surprised to see any kind of form of it still existing, even if that's arguably more realistic. I'm not really caring about the realism of it. I'm more just like, we've got other things to do. I don't know if HR is ever going to be quite as interesting as the Root stuff from episode 1 and 2. Like, I don't know if it's ever going to be able to even come close to that. It feels like we've kind of graduated from those season 1 style story. It was great for season 1. Like, don't get me wrong. It was a great sort of freshman kind of bad guy to kind of deal with. So I'm curious to see how they develop and probably add depth, I would imagine, to this new character Quinn and give him more oomph so that we can care about him as a villain. Because right now, I wouldn't say they've done that yet. They've just given me a face, and that's pretty much it. We don't really know too much about him yet. So we'll see how that goes, but that's kind of where we are right now. So Yeah, I mean, that was more or less the episode. I mean, there's probably like some things you could talk about more. There's some other comedy little moments like Finch hiding in Reese's gun closet, which actually reminds me of a funny line at the start of the episode where Reese is like maintaining his big sniper rifle in the library, and Reese or Finch says, "Do you really have to do that here?" To which Reese says, "Well, people look at me funny when I do it in the park." That's a classic dry Reese line, which made me give a good chuckle to. So I enjoyed that. Yeah, Finch racing over the dog because he's supposed to have a dog when Reese is taking Maxine back to his place for safety because they've been shot at. I almost wonder if there could have been more fun stuff with Reese having to like protect her in secret. Like, she thinks he's just a regular guy who's there on a date, but he's secretly, because there's a one moment when he's putting her in the car where he's kind of like trying to fire shots without her noticing. And I thought maybe there could have been more fun with that. Maybe they could have done something else with that. The big showdown happens at I think it's like a full fairground. It's just the importer exporter guy who was falsely accused of being the head of HR had bought a carousel of some kind, and he'd hid the ledger inside part of the carousel. So the final shootout with some corrupt FBI agents is in a carousel. So we get kind of this almost action movie style location for a final shootout. But Carter and Fusco show up as backup, which again is also kind of fun because Reese is like being basically he's getting the shit kicked out of him, and Finch is reminding him, "Hey, Mr. Reese, you can't fight back. Remember, you can't look like you know how to fight in front of her, so just take it. Help's on the way." And that gave me a chuckle as well. As did Reese hanging about the police station when Maxine was giving her statement. And Carter's having to pretend that he's a stranger, and Fusco even gives him like a weird look as he notices him as he's walking past. All these little moments, they're all very entertaining. Like, it's the sort of thing where even if I'm not like singing the praises of like the intricacies of the plot like I am in the best episodes, there's still a lot of enjoyable little things to get out of an episode of Person of Interest. So all of that was very good. Certainly not a bad episode, but definitely a couple of things that feel I'm surprised that we're going down certain paths a little bit again. So we'll see how that goes. But that is my thoughts on this Person of Interest. I'll see you next week for the next one, and of course you can support all the content by going over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and supporting for however much you feel like you're comfortable with every month. It helps keep all the content coming, and of course you can hit the like button, helps out a bunch as well. More people will find the show on the channel if you do. But thank you very much. I always appreciate anyone coming to talk about the show or hear my thoughts on it. It's fun to talk about good TV. So thank you very much for joining. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?